It's our pleasure to have our speakers from NIGMS today, Dr. Isaah Vincent and Dr. Oleg Barski. Dr. Isaah Vincent is Scientific Review Officer, and Dr. Oleg Barski is Program Director at the Division of Pharmacology, Physiology, and Biochemistry at NIGMS. So the format is, first, we're going to start with Dr. Isaah Vincent, and after that, Dr. Oleg Barski will go. And during that time, feel free to keep asking questions. So I want to introduce Dr. Isaah Vincent briefly. He is the Science Review Officer in the NIGMS Scientific Review Branch. As a SRO, he manages special emphasis panels and the PWDA study section, which reviews NRSA institutional pre-doctoral training grants. Dr. Vincent received his BS from Iowa State and his PhD from the University of Virginia. And interestingly, before joining this, he also was AAA Science and Tech Policy Fellow and worked in the Office of Disease Prevention at NIH. We are really excited to have you here, Dr. Isaah. You can go ahead now.
Thanks everybody for having us on today. First of all, I want to kind of say, I know it's grant review. It's not the most exciting topic sometimes, and it's also kind of a black box. And I really want to hopefully through this kind of just give you a small opening of that black box to kind of help you fill in some of the pieces, because it really is, everyone is really aligned to try to make you have the best kind of grant experience, as well as hopefully getting your grant funded, so that it's not a barrier based on kind of the grant review process, but rather it's really talking about your application and what the content in that application is. So again, trying to open that black box. Let's see if I can move the screen. Let's try this one more time. All right. So just talking about the K99 program in general. Whoops. I'm going to try to keep the pop-up closed. There you go. So primarily the K99 is intended to foster the development of independent research scientists. So there are a couple key elements to the program, namely that one of the things is that you still have to be mentored. It is not just a R01, and I'll kind of point that out several times during this. You should really not approach this as an R01, but rather it's a structured training to independence award. And one of the other things that we would also like to highlight is a new opportunity spearheaded by NIGMS, but also supported by a large number of the other institutes, is the Maximizing Opportunities for Scientific and Academic Independent Careers, or also known as the MOSAIC program. So it's a key, another mechanism by which we can support diversity within the academic and biomedical workforce. So there are two funding opportunity announcements, and as a Science Review Officer, I will hammer this home every time. Please read the FOAs fully. They are key to kind of understanding what to apply for, what you actually need and must put in your application. So you have two opportunity announcements. You have the parent announcement, and so that's the standard K99, and that is supported by, I do believe, all of the institutes and centers at the NIH. And then the MOSAIC K99 R00, which is only a subset of those ICs, and I'll kind of cover that in a couple slides. All right, so again, the K99 format will provide 5 years of support in two phases. You're going to have a mentored K99 phase that has to be at least 1 year, and then you also have the R00 phase, and that's with up to 3 years of independent research support, and it has slight budgetary details that hopefully Oleg will be able to answer your questions on, because it is not a review criteria. So I will tell you that we definitely do not try to kind of fiddle around with the budget. But and then you get the K99, sorry, the MOSAIC K99. So in addition to those two components of a mentored phase as well as an R00 independent phase, you actually also have participation in cohorts that are organized by now newly announced the 3 UE5 organizations. So that would be the American Society of Cell Biology, the American Society of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology, and the Association of American Medical Colleges. And so those are the 3 UE5s that will be managing cohorts by which by entering classes of K99 scholars, will be working with each other for mentorship and career development. Just a little bit of like a little overview of the Mosaic program in general. Again, you will have again a wide pool of applicants to the Mosaic K99 program that will have various different expertise. They will apply, and those that are funded will then be assigned to one of the 3 different organizations, and then they will be organized into cohorts. And so usually it will be about 5 Mosaic K99 PIs each year, and they'll be continually adding new cohorts. And so in the hopes that they'll build kind of camaraderie as well as develop other independent skills. So as I mentioned earlier, other ICs participating in the Mosaic K99 and IBAB, as well as all these other institutes. And so you could find out more about this looking at on our website. It will have the Mosaic page. It will kind of link you both to the FOA itself, as well as some of the other institutes that are also funding this.
We have a question real quick. My understanding is that you cannot apply for both the Mosaic and K99 and the Mosaic K99 and the parent at the same time. If you were eligible for Mosaic K99, do you have any advice for how best to choose between applying for the Mosaic or the parent?
I want to be very careful here, and this may be better addressed by Oleg, just because I try not to influence on like sculpting your applications. It's kind of the separation between a science review officer and a program officer, and I don't want to step on anyone else's toes. You should be able to. So Oleg, can you better address that question really quickly?
I think that can you apply to the part that can you apply to both? I think the regular general NIH policy on overlapping applications apply, so that you cannot have 2 similar applications at the same time under review. As far as the choice, I have no advice. Probably it's best discussed with your mentor or mentor's team, and if needed, then speak to us, to the program officer of the either scientific area or Dr. Gibbs here at NIGMS. He is supervising Mosaic program, so the contact information is on the website and better discuss individually.
Yeah. So again, I didn't want to step on program toes there, but yeah. So you can't submit 2 at the same time just because of overlap, and we'll flag it and have one of them withdrawn. All right. Okay. So just talking about some basic eligibility criteria for the programs. So no more than 4 years of postdoctoral research experience at the time of the initial or for your resubmission. You must be in a mentored postdoctoral training position. If you are, say, a staff scientist or like some sort of other research position where you're not in a mentored research position, that will also be potentially grounds for withdrawal. So for the parent K99, there is no citizenship requirement for applicants. An applicant may be a citizen or non-citizen national of the United States. And then for the Mosaic specific, it is, however, is only eligible for U.S. citizens or permanent residents. And finally, for the Mosaic, you must complete the description of the candidate's contribution to the program goals attachment, and that will, again, what's the requirements for that will be more highlighted in the FOA. All right. So kind of broad level ideas on what the application is requiring is, again, you have to provide a compelling rationale for at least 1 year of additional mentored research training, as I mentioned before. Also, I want to point out that we'll make the slides available. I do believe we've already sent them to the organizers so that you guys will hopefully, if you guys ask questions about them, you will also have those as well. You must also identify a mentor, and he has to be listed in the application. You are also required to fulfill the NIH requirements for the responsible conduct of research. Also you also have to provide 3 personal letters of reference. And then again, with the K99, R00 specific, again, candidate eligibility statement, the diversity, as well as the diversity statement. But kind of getting into really what you guys probably are looking for, not just us reiterating a lot of the programmatic requirements. However, please feel free to reach out to your science review officer if you're having questions about application-specific issues. So if you want to know how to fill out a particular form, what form package, which should be Form F, it's now, we've switched over to Form F from Form E. Please reach out to your science review officer. They are here to help you and help you make sure that your application goes successfully into the system. All right, but what we really want to get into is really you're trying to figure out like how do reviewers handle an application for the K99 or the Mosaic K99. So when you submit an application, looks like a black box. You just put it into the computer. You probably send it to your grants office, who have them sign off on it, and then they send it and submit it into the NIH. After it hits the NIH, it actually goes through several different steps. I would love to cover all of these because I like to go into the minutiae of boring bureaucratic things. But really what you're looking for here, and what I think everyone's kind of interested in, is the application assignment and the initial review of the application, as well as the review meeting. Because that's really where our reviewers on all of our different panels are actually interacting with your grant and seeing and assessing and trying to give us the best feedback to you as the applicant for your application. And I'll kind of cover out like some tips on reading a summary statement so that if you do not get funded in your first attempt, you know how to read and respond to the application. All right, so when your grant application comes in, it goes into a place called the Division of Receipt and Referral. That's in CSR, that's the Center for Scientific Review. It will move through there. It will be assigned to a particular IC, and either it will be reviewed either in CSR itself or in a different IC. It will go through a quick process of administrative review to make sure that you've fulfilled the requirements for the application itself. That makes the application and you eligible for the particular mechanism. Once we have an idea of who our applicants are and what are the applications, the specific expertise we will need for a set of applications, we will then proceed to do reviewer recruitment. This may be different between if your application may be handled by a standing panel or a SEP, which is a special emphasis panel. If it's handled by a SEP, usually we have to start from scratch and recruit reviewers that have specific expertise to address the applications within the pool, our pool of applications. If it happens to be at CSR or at an institute and center that has a specific panel already designated, they may already have an established set of reviewers who will oversee the review of the applications. And now, so kind of going into those two key other areas is the assignment and the initial review of application. So when I say what are the reviewers looking for, I really am talking mostly about the score review criteria. I want to say there are everyone thinks that there's some sort of secret in the review process, either it's like a small hidden room, since you don't know exactly who's assigned to your application. You just kind of put your application in and then it comes out with a summary statement. But I like to say that there are no secrets in peer review. It is, except for who exactly is assigned to your application, you know exactly who's on the panel, you know when it's reviewed, you know the criteria that your application will be assessed on. So again, when you're looking at your application, there are really 5 key elements that will be assessed on your application. So it's your candidate, the career development plan, the mentors, and the environment and institutional commitment to the candidate. I apologize for the squares. The text is kind of funky. Everyone tends to focus primarily on the research plan itself, but all of these elements are scored review criteria. And I want to show you this slide because this is also very similar to the slide we show to our reviewers when we're orienting them before they're reviewing any of the applications. So they're receiving the same input that I'm giving you here today. So they're considering your application on the 5 elements and not just one. They may weigh each of these different sections differently, but they're still accessing all of those areas. And when I mentioned that there was no secrets in peer review, under each of those elements, they're actually defined in the FOA itself. So if you go to the websites, if you look in section 5, I think this is from the K99, you go to section 5 and it'll go, here are the application review criteria. These are the exact same criteria that we will be drilling into our reviewers when we're doing our orientations with our reviewers. So you should be able to ask and answer these questions about each of your applications when you're writing them. And we caution our reviewers not to consider elements outside of these review criteria. So really, again, we want to make sure that what information we're giving to you is actually the information that you will be being assessed on. And when you're looking at the kind of scores and numbers and how to think about those overall review criteria, what you shouldn't be assessing it is by this. So I don't know if probably many of you have actually seen this. Looking at this is for R01s. This is how to evaluate overall impact. And if you kind of see this, if you look in this, I don't know if you could see my mouse. If you look here, it says applications are addressing a problem of high importance, interest to the field. They may have some or no weaknesses. And that's talking about a high impact application for an R01. But I want you actually to look at when you're thinking about review criteria is actually the K99 R00 specific scoring criteria. And that differs, so between an R01 and Fs and Ks, there's a lot of difference between those applications because like one, I highlighted those same 5 elements that I showed you in the earlier slide, but if you look in this, like the high impact box, it's asking for applications that propose training or career development of high value and benefit for the candidate and who has a high potential for developing it into a productive independent scientist. So you can see how that differs greatly from one review criteria to the other. So we're always asked, what do reviewers want? So good science. Good science depends on the field. Of course, significance and impact is one idea, that new ideas, and importantly, noting the limitations of your study and your approaches. Again, fitting your application to the mechanism. So that's in terms of realistic aims and timelines for both your training and your research. Looking at your mentors, collaborators, and consultants. Looking that there is actually mentorship in the application itself. There's a clear delineation between the PI and the mentor's ownership of a particular project. And then defining the reason why mentors, co-mentors, collaborators are there in the application. And finally, grantsmanship. It's a kind of a catch-all phrase that we use, but it kind of handles things such as like brevity and clarity. Perhaps too jargony and over-assuming what potential reviewer may know about a particular topic, and leaving out important information and details about experimental design, what have you. And a concise, well-written application. Again, I want to hint, CSR provides a great website with a lot of these resources to kind of let you know more in-depth what's going on in the review process. All right, so when your application, first it will go to the initial reviewers. They will write up their critiques. those reviewers will then submit those critiques and their initial scores, and that will allow us to set an order of review, as well as potentially identifying applications that may be not discussed in the meeting. Once those are done at the meeting itself, any member, as soon as we start, we do just kind of a rigmarole talking about basic confidentiality, rigor, implicit bias, and things like that. But then we kind of move on directly into the applications themselves. So what we do is very standardized. We do it with every application. We ask any of the members in conflict with any of the applications, and that's usually a conflict of interest. Perhaps they're at your institution, perhaps they've worked with either you or your mentor, and so that they're in conflict with the application. So they leave the room. We then start with review. All the assigned reviewers will give their initial scores. These scores may change, they're not permanent. The reviewer one will give a high-level overview of your application, as well as its strengths and weaknesses. That's followed by reviewer 2 and 3 giving their opinions and whether they agree with strengths or have additional strengths or weaknesses. After that, it opens it up to the full floor of for discussion. All members are invited to join the discussion. At the close of that discussion, the chair provides a summary of that discussion. I write that down along with notes that I have from the overall discussion. The assigned reviewers will give their final scores. Those final scores will then kind of set a range for the rest of the reviewers. They're allowed to vote outside that range, but then all the reviewers in the room will all give their scores in our systems, and then it's given an average for your score that will eventually reflecting your score. And then after that, we discuss things that are additional review criteria that are non-scoring portions. So that's the budget, the responsible conduct of research, the authentication plans, data sharing plans, what have you. These will not affect your score. However, they may put a bar to funding if they're unacceptable. So if your human subjects, sorry, not human subjects, but if your authentication plan is unacceptable, you'll actually have to work with colleagues in program to make it an acceptable document, and then they can release any potential bars to fund. All right, so when you get your summary statement back, I think it's important to kind of go over what it looks like. I think probably a lot of you have seen summary statements before. Some of these things are probably old hat to you. I don't even know if that's the right phrase. So again, your program officer, who you should be the one who you should contact after you get your summary statement. Your impact priority scores here. Percentile, you may not have a percentile in all of your applications, as well as like indications for early stage investigators at the bottom. One of the first things you'll see if your application is discussed, you will see the resume and summary of discussion. Resumes and summary of discussion is what I write up at the beginning of all of your summary statements. It is written by the SRO, and it summarizes the salient points that are score driving for the application. So the rest of the critiques that you'll see actually lower in the summary statement highlight other issues that they may have had, but these issues reflected in the resume and summary of discussion are the ones that they were discussed and drove everyone's score. And we try to highlight all of them and make them clear so that you can make your potential adjustments upon reapplication. And also just a note here, if you have any administrative notes, they'll usually be highlighted up at the very top of the application. So, okay, so now who can answer your questions about either review or your application after review? So before your application, again, me and my colleagues will be able to help you before you submit your application and during the review process. So however, if you want to ask how your application may fit in a particular IC, please reach out to your program officer. If you're looking for the kind of the technical details on how to apply to a particular funding mechanism, please contact your science review officer. During the review process, really only contact me. More or less, the program officers will send your questions my way. And then after it's been reviewed, after you receive your summary statement, you should be talking to your assigned program officer, which will again be highlighted at the top of your summary statement. If you have kind of general questions about the whole grant process, you're welcome to reach out to our grants info at NIH. And if you have technical problems with any of the systems, I am not IT. I usually I'll have to ask them for any really technical issues. If you're having glitches in submitting, it's not taking a particular form, please talk to the ERA Service Help Desk. All right, again, some helpful handouts. So insider guide to peer review, what happens to your grant application, and NIH grant application useful web link. So it has all things about talking about particular scoring criteria, how certain things are done. All are very useful to kind of understand the more general what happens to your grant once you submit it to the NIH. All right, so I think this is the switchover point. I'm going to pass it off to Oleg, and I'll be holding the slides if you guys want to do an intro for Oleg, and then I'll handle it.
And I just wanted to get in here real quick.
Sure.
There are a bunch of questions that are relatively general, and in an effort to see if Oleg is able to answer those questions, I'll save those for the end. So if you've asked a question, we'll be doing those all at the end. And without that, we can go ahead and pass this over to Oleg. Let me just do a quick little introduction. So Oleg Barski is a program director of the Division of Pharmacology, Physiology, and Biological Chemistry, where he handles grants in enzyme catalysts and regulation. He also oversees F31 predoctoral and F32 postdoctoral fellowships and K99 R00 Pathway to Independence Awards in Pharmacology, Physiology, and Biological Chemistry. Before coming to NIGMS, he was an assistant professor in the Division of Cardiovascular Medicine at the University of Louisville School of Medicine. Barski earned his Master's of Science in Chemistry and a PhD in Chemical Kinetics and Catalysts from Moscow State University in Russia. He conducted postdoctoral research at Osaka Biosciences Institute in Japan and Baylor Medical College of Medicine. All right. Take it away.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Kaylee, for the introduction, and Isaah for the overview of the program and making it easier for me to talk. So Isaah gave you an introduction from kind of a review point of view, and I will take the program part, the viewpoint from the program officer part. Next slide, please. So the goal of the whole K99 program, as Isaah already mentioned, is to facilitate or accelerate transition to faculty, right? So in the language from the website, it's to complete needed mentored career development and transition, and it's in the bold here, in a timely manner to independent tenure or equivalent faculty positions. So timely manner is important. As you already know, the eligibility limit is 4 years of postdoctoral experience. However, at NIGMS, we encourage you to apply earlier and to apply during your 3rd postdoctoral year. Why is that? So if you make a calculation, right, if you apply, let's say, at the very end of your 4th year of postdoc, it takes at least 9 months or sometimes close to a year at the NIH to review the application and come up with a funding decision and with the notice of award. So that would be 5 plus 2 years of mentored K99 phase gives you 7. So 7 years of postdoc, it is not really acceleration, right? So therefore, we encourage you to apply early, not super early, not as soon as you go into your postdoc position. You should get some postdoctoral experience, but nonetheless, do not wait until the very last moment of your eligibility. Next, please. So eligibility normally is limited to 4 years, but if you need to, despite what I said earlier, you can apply and obtain an extension. Important point here is if you are thinking you deserve an extension or qualify for an extension, contact us program well in advance. And we will kind of at NIGMS, the process is that the committee that handles the K99, we look at all such requests and discuss them preliminarily. But important to know that the final decision will be made when the complete application and the cover letter together that comes together with it that describes the reason for extension and the request for extension is received. However, preliminarily we will discuss and we will give you a good indication whether you qualify or not. So what qualifies for extension? A significant change in the field of study. And it's not like moving from biochemistry to cell biology, let's say, or from physiology to biochemistry. It is something drastic. From physical science to life sciences, for example. I had an applicant who moved from aerospace dynamics research into the life sciences research using the physics acumen that he, physics engineering acumen that he obtained during his training, right? So that is the type of change in field of study is not within the biological sciences. It is a big change. Secondly, if you had a break in research, and again, contact the NIGMS staff or NIH staff with that. Typically, the amount of time of the extension you can obtain equals to the amount of time that you had a break. So recently, within the last year, the new policy came to support the parents. And so automatic a 1-year extension is given for a childbirth if you give birth to a child during your postdoctoral years. And technically, I believe you just need to submit a cover letter giving a date of birth for the child and that it is within your postdoctoral period.
We have a couple questions specific to this, so I just wanted to ask them. If you have 2 children, can you get additional extensions? How might that work?
The FAQ page at the NIH on the K99 says that only one year extension is given. However, we would, if you have special circumstances, we would encourage again to contact the program, but the default is 1 extension. Okay, so going forward is natural disasters and the closures, so where you cannot conduct research also qualifies for an extension. And so recently, with the global pandemic and COVID-19, we know that it caused a great disruption. The universities were closed for a period of time, close to 2 months at least or more. We all are still working from home and conducting this each from our home. When they reopened, it is gradual. The work is in shifts and so on. So the 2 notices mentioned here, one for parent and one for Mosaic, they are close to identical, and they give you a 2-cycle extension for your eligibility, right? So approximately 8 months. You should look at that notices, right? If you think you qualify. So if you just, it is for people whose eligibility expires soon, right? It is for those whose eligibility will expire, I believe, starting from this June-July submission cycle, and then the next one, September, and possibly, I cannot remember exactly, possibly the next one that would be February, March. But please take a look at the add the notices to be exact, right? So do not apply if you still have 2 years of eligibility, right? But for those whose eligibility is about to expire and then they were not able to work to do those proof of principle experiments due to COVID, there is approximately 8 months or 2-cycle extension of eligibility. Next, please, Isaah. Okay, so now let's go into the application, right? So Isaah already mentioned that the K99 application is a little bit different from the regular research application, R01. And there are a lot of moving parts in that that are not present in the regular research. So of course, it goes without saying that the proposals should be, the research plan should be strong, and that your proposal should propose really a strong and exciting research plan. However, there are several things in addition to that, right? Several criteria in addition to the strong research plan. So one of the most important for that is to demonstrate the need for training. So in the funding opportunity announcement, it says that the strongest applicant will require a well-conceived plan for 1 or 2 years of substantive mentored career development activities that will help them become competitive candidates for tenure track positions and launch independent research program. So what does it mean? In my mind, it is like a kind of bell-shaped curve, right? So you can be, if you just finished your PhD, right, just starting your postdoc, it is too early, right? You don't have still, probably you do not have the experience enough yet to successfully apply and to transition for a faculty position soon. However, it can be too late also. So if there is, if you've been a postdoc for, let's say, close to 4 years, and you have already been trained in everything that there is to be trained in your Mendes laboratory. You know the field very well by now, you know all the methods, you know all there is to know, you learned all there is to learn from your mentor. Then you're not a good candidate also, right? So those who cannot provide a compelling rationale for additional mentoring are not strong candidates, right? So this means that you need to be ready on one hand, but still you need to very clearly say and put in the application what additional training, what you don't know yet, what you hope to be trained in. Otherwise, if you know it all and have all the experience and knowledge and qualifications to complete the project proposed, then we encourage you to just send the applications, apply for faculty positions. And the rationale is, if you apply for a K99, there still will be 2 to 3 years of postdoc, right? And if you are ready now, then it will delay your transition to faculty rather than accelerate. Therefore, this is this requirement. One important thing to note that proposed fields of training, scientific fields of training, should correspond to the research you propose in the K99 phase, not R00 phase. For example, if you, for example, your research is, your first and second aims are to do knockout, knockdown genetically manipulated cell lines or organism, use CRISPR-Cas. Second aim, let's say, structural crystallography. And third aim, using all those resources, do untargeted metabolomics, for example, right? And mass spectrometry. And you know CRISPR and genetic manipulations, you know crystallography. What you want to do the training is in mass spec and metabolomics. But the actual work for this is planned for the R00 phase. This would be a disconnect, and that would not go well in review, because reviewers will say, well, how will you be trained in that when you plan to do the work when the mentors are not around anymore, when you are independent, right? So you have to construct your application in such a manner that the science that you are planning to do in the first 2 years, that employs the field that you want to get training. In addition to research plan, do not discount the career development training. And that would include all those points that are presented here: networking, grant and paper writing, oral presentations, teaching. You do not need to teach you the whole course, of course, but your mentor can invite you to give 1 or 2 lectures in his course, in his or her course, or take a small group sessions, so that you get prepared for the teaching duties when you are at the faculty level, right? So mentorship, mentor summer students, undergraduate, graduate students. Leadership can be many different things. If you are in the big lab, then you may take a leadership role of a certain group within your mentor's lab, or some outreach activities, leadership and sub-outreach activities. And learning about the faculty job, often there are like seminar series or invited speakers from different paths of careers come and so on. So courses, things like lab management, hiring, departmental structure, and so on. So if available, participate in those. And also one more thing here, some applicants make a mistake. They say, well, this seminar series and are available in my department and my university, right? And they list them, but they don't say which they themselves plan to take advantage of, right? So it's not that they're available, but you leave them by the wayside, right? It is which ones you want to take, right? And of course, plans can change, right? You may plan to take this one now, but then something changed or something more appealing came, or time commitments will work better with something else, so you can change the plan. But putting in the plan says that you thought about it and that you made the commitment and that you are being prepared for that, right? So it's not only they're available, but you plan to take advantage and which ones you choose to take advantage of. So in short, right, to summarize all this, the plan, the training and career development plan should be tailored to your needs, right? Not some generic plan that is good for any postdoc, right? For you specifically. I think that's all I wanted to say about this part. Let's go to the next slide. So now a little bit implication of what I just said in practical issues, right? So institutes differ a little bit in interpretations. Therefore, where it is specific for NIGMS, I put NIGMS interpretation. But here it is: do not start your job search prior to receiving the K99 award. And this text is taken verbatim from our NIGMS K99 webpage. And it says, so individuals who are applying or interviewing for tenure track faculty positions are not the intended candidates for this award. If you decide to just do it to see what happens, testing, it's also, you're not a good candidate, because the logic is here that a decision to apply for an independent tenure track faculty position implies that you, the applicant, and the mentor feels that you are prepared to learn an independent career, right? And especially if you have been interviewing, but you don't need to be interviewing. If you just sent out a dozen applications and already testing the waters, we will ask, did you do it? And you will not, you are not the good candidate and you will not be considered further for these awards. And again, the kind of the background for this, there would be a discrepancy because the mentor in the K99 would write a statement that you need this training, and that's the plan to get you prepared. If you apply for a faculty position, then you will write in the application that you are ready. Your mentor will write your letter of recommendation that you are ready, and these two things do not kind of go against each other, right? So either you are ready or you need additional training, right? Therefore, that's what NIGMS recommends, right? So if you do start your job search, you will invalidate the K99 application. And even, let's say it's been reviewed, right? You received a score of 10. You are pretty sure that, okay, score of 10, right? That's, you will get the K99. And it is August, right? And you look at the advertisement in Science and Nature, and let me send them out. So before you actually receive the award, we will ask you again, at the time of funding decisions after the council meeting, the program will ask you, have you started the search? And if you have started before K99 is awarded, again, this means that you are ready to launch. And that will be a kind of counterproductive for NIH to give you an award and hold you for additional 2 years in the postdoctoral position when you can start your independent research already. Enough of that. Next slide. Just want to add that it is really frustrating, right? Sometimes when people do it and the application got a great review and has been discussed in our playlist meeting, recommended for funding, and then the applicant tells you, well, you know what, I got invited for the interview, and then you have to say, well, I'm sorry, you are not considered anymore, and everybody are really, really frustrated. So it's best not to get into this situation. So now from need for training, let's go to the next stage, mentors, collaborators, and advisory committee. So the difference between mentor and collaborator is that, and there can be more than one mentor, right? That collaborator makes a commitment to help you in a certain area of science, right? And educate you and help you with experiments. Mentor take a responsibility for your everything, right? For your scientific development and your career development, right? Advisory committee is more applicable to the R00 phase when we recommend the mentoring advisory committee for the new faculty. Next slide. So for the mentor, right? Isaah mentioned that the mentor is, of course, active investigator in the area of the proposed research, committed both to the career development and to the direct supervision of your research. The mentor will document the availability of support and facilities for high quality research. So it's important that mentor has funding and the laboratory is active and vibrant laboratory. If it's not, that would be a minus. If you are the only one, for example, and isolated, that would not make for a good supporting environment. And it is ideal, recommended that the mentor has a successful track record of mentoring postdocs or people at your career stage. Next, please. So what if you choose a mentor who is just starting assistant professor, right? But his research is very interesting. He is a star, he is a rising star. He is active, energetic, nice person. So if the primary mentor has limited training experience, right, but he is an expert in the field and a good mentor for their research area, then the NIH recommends, we recommend to include a co-mentor with a strong track record as a mentor, right? And this should be somebody close to the research, that he understands the research, who also takes and indicates his commitment that he will spend time and effort to mentor you, right? But that will kind of fill in the blanks that the young assistant professor who just started his lab and who is your primary mentor, for example, does not have. We are at NIGMS, right? Majority of our applicants are PhDs, not MDs, so we do not concentrate on clinical part in this. in this talk, but it says that if you hold a clinical doctorate, you must have at least one clinical person in your mentor team. You may propose like a mentoring team or advisory committee, doesn't matter what to call it, that will provide guidance towards your research and career development. If you do have more than one, especially if you have more than two, one individual should coordinate, and there should be a plan how these mentors and how these mentors, members of the team or advisory committee, communicate with each other to provide consistent guidance. So it's not that one pulls you in one direction and another in another direction and they do not coordinate. So there should be a plan for the coordination and how you would interact with all your mentors or committee and how they will coordinate with each other, right? So do not leave it on kind of hanging in the air, right? You have to write even mundane stuff. I will meet with my mentor like once a week and with my co-mentor once a month, and they will talk with each other, whatever. And we have the joint meetings once every 3 months, for example, or once a month. Whatever the plan is, just put it in. If you don't put it in, reviewers will assume that you do not have a plan and that maybe incidentally they pull you in the one direction, but maybe not. And of course, when preparing the application, don't do it on your own. You work with your mentoring team, with your mentors in preparing the application. Next. Next important point for the K99 mechanism. Demonstrating independence, right? Which means independence of your research program, of your research project from the mentors, right? So let's say you've been in the mentor's laboratory for a couple of years, right? You worked on his R01 project, you achieved something, you got some training, and now you've got the ideas that are, of course, in the general direction of your mentor's research, but they're different. They are something that are related, but not the same thing that your mentor works on. So in your grant proposal, describe the relationship between yours and mentor's research, what is similar, but what is different in yours, and the plan to separate scientifically from your mentor and advance to research independence, right? So it is like a branch of a tree, that you are the branch. So in addition to you describe this, and the mentor also describes it. And this is the same for fellowship applications and for K99 applications, is that that should correspond, right? That's very important that what you say and what your mentor says correspond to each other, right? That indicates that you have a cohesive plan and that you discussed it and that you are on the same page, right? You are not thinking different things. So mentor, in his part, right, we went over what your candidate put in your part. Mentor, in his statement, put a plan for transitioning of the candidate to the independent phase and how he or she will help. Very important that that includes the statement, identifying the components of the research proposal that you will be able to take with you out of your mentor's lab when you transition to an independent position. And if any resources or reagents should be taken, something like, I don't know, knockout mouse line or cell lines or proprietary chemicals or reagents, then the mentor should state also that you are welcome and that you can take these things out of the lab, right? So this kind of non-competing statement, the mentor says that he is not going to compete with you in your research project, but he will help you or she will help you, right? And it is okay. Everybody do not just cut ties with your mentor. You continue your relationship and you continue to communicate, but the project is yours and you're not competing with them. So that's very important, and that should be said explicitly, not implicitly, explicitly. Mentor should say, yes, the candidate, you can take the project with you to your new independent position and new institution. Next. So nuts and bolts of the application. So it is expected that you will commit 75% of your time to your career development during the mentored phase. In my application, I highlighted where it was NIGMS specific. I highlighted what NIGMS recommends, right? So because NIH institutes, they differ slightly in the interpretations of the policy and of the FOA, like different budgetary guidelines, a little bit different attitudes. So look on the institutional website. There is a link to the IC, we call Institute Center. That's why I see specific information on the website for the funding opportunity announcement. And so look at these both places, the link to IC specific information and the website for the institution when you start writing the application, right? What is specific to your institution. And of course, contact and talk to the program officer. K99 mechanism uses standard receipt dates. The new applications are submitted February, June, and October on the 12th. And the resubmissions, there are no renewals actually, right? But the resubmissions are a month later, also on the 12th, March, July, and November. Next slide, please, Isaah. Now, let's say you are successful, you have been selected, you received your K99, you are progressing with your research, and you got involved in the faculty search. And so in order for the K99 for the R00 phase to be activated, it's not automatic. You must accept independent tenure track or equivalent faculty position at the university or a research institution. 2 phases are intended to be continuous in time. So K99 phase is 2 years, right? But NIGMS, we ask you to complete, you can transition earlier. We ask you to complete at least 1 year. So you can transition anytime between 1 and 2 years. And if something goes wrong, if it didn't work on the first time, then at NIGMS, we allow you 1 year after the end of the K99 to start your faculty position. There are things that happen, like, for example, you did the search, you got an offer, then something happened at the institution, the leadership changed, for example, or some budgetary problems uncovered and so on, and the offer is withdrawn, right? So that happens in life, and then you have to go another cycle of applications, right? So we give you another year, right, to start your faculty position. Rarely happens, but it's life. When you start getting offers for the R00, we highly encourage you to contact your assigned program officer at NIGMS before you sign the offer. So we do not negotiate with the university for you, but we look at the offer and we look that all the requirements for successful start of the R00 are met, and give you suggestions, because we see multiple offers, we give you suggestions. For example, it doesn't talk about the mentoring team for you, and it's important to have a mentoring team at the beginning of your faculty career. Or there is very vague description of the facilities, what lab you get, or what access to the joint equipment you get. So we give you these pointers, and you will then come with these questions to the department chairman of the department that gives you the offer. So you do it before you sign the offer, because after it's signed, it is a legally binding contract. So there is not much you can do about it after. So it's best to do it before. And once everything is finalized, right, and once your offer is signed and so on, and you start or about to start at your institution, the new university where you will be faculty will submit an R00 application on your behalf. You will write it, of course, and all the components of the R00 application are listed on the funding opportunity announcement of the K99. That would include the letter from your new chairman, the letter from your previous mentor. You have to complete the responsible conduct of research training in your K99 mentored phase prior to moving to R00 phase, and update on the progress report and how the aims of the R00 have changed, right? Taking into account what happened during the 2 years. Once you start your R00 award, you are required to devote no less than 75% effort to your research in general, but do not need to be to the R00 supported research. It will be to research in general, right? Not all to the R00 supported research. And is it the end? Do I have anything else?
I think we are done with that. Yep. Okay. I see that there is a bunch of questions in the chat and the question and answer portion of it. I think Oleg actually knocked out a couple while we were while he was covering a lot of it. I'm just gonna, let's see.
I have one just real quick. I was looking through it, see it's been answered. Just to clarify, the parental extension, does that apply the same for moms and dads?
No, it's not the same for mom and dad. It is intended for the person giving birth, right? Okay. So if dad took time away from work to take care of the newborn, then then he will contact the program and apply for extension based on the time that he took away from research.
Yeah, and on the review side, please contact your PO about extensions before you submit your application. I like, especially because I'm looking at for these mechanisms where there is a cutoff for the eligibility. I'm looking at how many years of experience you have and post your PhD, and if you go over that, I will flag it, and I don't like if there's no exemption or you've not put anything in for it. I can't allow it to go further. I will have it withdrawn. I'll talk to Oleg or whoever is your PO that's assigned to your application to make sure that has anyone contacted you with any eligibility thing, and they say no, I will have to have it withdrawn. I saw that there were a couple questions on the extensions. So we have the COVID-19 extension that is currently ongoing. So all of those can be applied. Check with your program officer before you submit your application. Again, so the parental leave, as well as anything that has to do with, there are also medical exemptions. So if you have a break in your science career due to medical issues, not just pregnancy, that one's now official, and we want to make that clear. But there's also if you're taking care of a loved one, if you are yourself sick, but please file the again. This is the review officer saying, please file those exemptions so that I know that they're somewhere that I can actually refer to, so I don't accidentally have to withdraw your application and then it sets you back another couple of months. So
with the resubmission or the extension for the K99 with COVID, obviously, how does that affect resubmission deadlines, or how does the initial submission deadline connect to the resubmission if it's been extended?
Sure. So when you do a resubmission of when you resubmit your application, I'm looking at the date of that resubmission and how that works with your eligibility. So if your resubmission still falls within the eligibility window, we'll allow it. If you have an extension induced by COVID, then I will apply that time to that window at that time. So the resubmission will work for both. But if you use a 1-year extension to increase your eligibility, and then you get to resubmit, it doesn't work again. It gives you 1 year from the date of your submission. So, sorry, 1 year from the date of your eligibility ending. So it extends it 1 year. It doesn't actually say, so both your primary submission and your secondary submission get an extra year. It gives you an extra year for your eligibility window, not for applications. Hopefully that was clear.
Thank you. Just a couple other basic things that I see. To receive as R00, should we already have a K99 in place?
Yeah, so they're linked mechanism. I think Oleg covered it already. So you have to apply it as a K99 or 00. The R00 won't automatically turn on as Oleg covered, but they're a linked mechanism. You can't just apply for the R00.
Great. And then another thing that I've seen several times is about the 4-year rule. If you have experience either outside of the US or non-research experience, like as a lecturer, does that count towards your 4 years of postdoctoral experience?
That's a great question. So again, if your lecturer experience happened before you receive your terminal degree, your PhD, then that won't count towards your postdoc eligibility. But if you are a lecturer, that may be consideration as you have achieved independence. So again, if you look at the FOA, I know it's highlighted in the Mosaic, and that's the one I was just looking at. Give me 1 second, and I'll put a link. Actually, I might just share it on the screen. They highlight kind of the considerations that your program officer will do, and I will do to make to see whether you're independent or not. And so please contact, again, your program officer, because I'll be contacting them as soon as I see your application with anything over 4 years of post PhD or MD PhD. Here, let me stop this share. Let's see if I can show this thing. All right, I'm gonna try.
Just to also clarify, so if you were in industry right after your PhD and you're now in a postdoc, how does that contribute to your 4 years?
That I would deflect straight to Oleg.
Yeah, I would say that yes, if, for example, you got your PhD, worked for a year in industry in research, right, and then decided to go to a university back to the postdoctoral position, the year in industry would count towards your 4 years of postdoctoral experience because it is in biomedical research. Same lecturing. If it is in the biomedical area, it would count. If you decide to also, you obtain a PhD and then you stayed for 9 months in your mentor's laboratory to finish up the publications and so on, and after that you move to a new laboratory, that 9 months will count as your postdoctoral research experience. Yeah. So if it is unrelated to science, let's say you also are a musician, right? And you decided for some family reasons, right? You could not move, and you decided to take a position to teach music somewhere for a year, right? Then this is not research, right? That this will not count.
Yeah, and again, please note them, because if we don't see them, we can't do anything about it. So one of the things highlighted, at least this is looking at the Mosaic K99, but it's similar in the normal K99. So talking about independence and dependence in your research positions, it really kind of clarifies here how we are looking at your application to determine or your position in determining whether it's mentored or not mentored, if it's independent or not. So this kind of helps. This will kind of help. But again, please reach out to either of us, and we'll be able to, or your SRO in whatever institute you're applying to ask those questions.
And I have another question just while you're on the topic. If you have eligibility questions, should you be reaching out to your SRO?
Yes, but you should also talk to your POs, because they will also be able to help you with a lot of things with your extensions. So that's what Oleg does. Like I can help you with the details, about that and how to note that, but it's really the program's job to handle the exemptions because they can actually happen at a lot of different phases. So.
Yes, we have a mechanism at NIGMS that not every program officer does not single-handedly do it, but you contact the program officer beforehand. We kind of consult with the whole committee, right? That of everybody, of all the program officers of the NGMS, and review who handles K99, and we make a recommendation.
So just another kind of content question. When the reviewers look at the mentorship aspect of the proposal, what kind of delineation are they looking for when it comes to ownership of the data or project between PI, mentor, and the applicant?
I will say first, clear. There has to be, if you just talk about the project and you assume that the reviewers will think that, okay, you'll be able to take this with you, the reviewers will ask, is there a clear delineation between your project and the ownership of that project and portability? So you need to clearly define it. Like you may be able, and especially with, I know with particular instruments, resources like biobanks and stuff like that, you need to actually make sure it's very clear in your application how you'll have, if you plan on using it in the R00, if you're not planning on using an R00, you're fine. But if you're planning to use a particular resource after you leave, you need to make that clear in your application and how that will be handled in your independence. Because especially if you say, well, I plan to move into a corner of in my independent phase, into a corner of my PI's lab. So I also don't want to use PI because in a K99, you are the PI. Your mentor is other key personnel, but not, you are the PI on the application. So your mentor, if you move into a corner of your mentor's lab, that may look bad on your independence. So you just need to you might need to make that very clear on how you plan on allocating resources after you become independent.
A couple other questions here. Is the diversity statement scored when you apply for the Mosaic K99?
Yes. So it's not scored independently. It's scored along with the rest of the application, and it impacts your overall score, but it doesn't have a specific criteria that it receives a score, because the diversity statement is actually incorporated in a lot of different elements in different parts of the plan. So it really deals with both the training, both you as a candidate and what your plans are, as well as the career development plan. So you'll actually see in the FOA again, in the review criteria, you'll see particular line to say, how do you plan on diversifying the workforce, or how do you plan on engaging in these activities? So it's just incorporated in elements. It doesn't have its own element.
And still on the topic of Mosaic, if someone applies for a 2-year K99 or Mosaic as a postdoc, do they have to stay at the same institution for those 2 years? If during the 2 years this person finds another postdoc or clinical fellow position at a different institution, can they carry the award?
So, well, this is a post-review thing, so I'm going to punt this to Oleg.
I can take this. There is no written requirement that you must be in your mentor's laboratory at the time of application. So actually, yeah, you can be in one laboratory, but choose a different mentor for the K99, and you plan to move to a different lab or different university, for example, when you receive K99 or prior to. I've never seen this in practice, but it is possible. Now, after receiving the K99, right, if mentor decides to move, for example, and you move together with mentor's laboratory, it's one thing. If you decide to move, it will this will mean that you are changing the mentor, right? So that's not that easy. I think every scientific project is unique, right? So doing the same project with a different mentor would be kind of difficult. So if there are circumstances, reach out to the program officer and we will discuss what makes sense, but like giving blanket, it's really unlikely, I would say.
And since we're still talking to you, we have a few questions about applying to faculty positions. So first of all, how will they know if you've applied to faculty positions? If you've already applied to faculty positions, should you not apply for a K99? And I think that kind of sums up the questions that we have.
Yes, if you have applied for a faculty position, you should not apply for a K99. At least at NIH, it's the funding opportunity announcement says that you're not a good candidate, right? So applying for a K99 would be a waste at that point. If you started applying after, let's say, the review is over, we do not have a database or a means to know that you applied, but it will be kind of on your conscience. We will, on your conscience. We will, every program officer, that's our instructions, we will ask prior to making an award, have you been applying? And you will have to say yes or no.
I'm just going to step away for one moment. I'll be right back.
Well then, Oleg, how about when you have a mentor and a collaborator, is it necessary to also have an advisory committee? If yes, who would be part of this committee?
Advisory committee is pretty rare, I would say, at the K99 phase. So usually more than 2 mentors is rare, right? Usually it's 1 or 2 mentors. And this co-mentor is usually there are 1 of the 2 reasons. Either your mentor is young and you choose a co-mentor, somebody who is more experienced and who can advise you in like affairs of the career development, faculty, politics in the department, and looking for a job and so on. Although looking for a job, right, the assistant professor who just got the job, right, he will be a good advisor how to look for a job. Or there is something that like some different area of scientific expertise that is not available in your mentor's lab, but there is somebody in different department or institution across the road or across the town, or sometimes in a different city that is interested in the project, but has a different scientific expertise and they will teach you. So more than 2 is rare. Advisory committee, I think it's more relevant. You can do it. You can have a mentoring team or advisory committee, which would be 3-4 mentors, or it doesn't matter, you call it mentoring team or advisory committee. But more applicable, I think, to the R00 phase, where we do recommend to have a mentoring committee when you start your new faculty position, and most universities will offer them. That would be a couple of more experienced, more senior faculty members from the department, somebody from a different department who will meet with you on a regular basis and advise you on the issues of faculty life and career development as a faculty.
So we have a few questions along these lines. How would you find which unit and what kind of K99 awards work with your particular research? We have a couple questions specifically about neuroscience.
Well, we are NIGMS, right? So, and that's what I know very well. Each institute, I mean, first on the funding opportunity announcement for the K99, there is a link. It says IC specific information, and it will give you the information that's specific to this institutes, including the budget, let's say, and the contact people, right? And also, if you just simply Google, you can find the K99 page at NCI, NINDS, and so on. Go there, see the description of the mission of the institute, and talk to the people there. Most likely, of course, right, since you are in your mentor's laboratory, you will look where your mentor is funded, right? And probably your research will be in that general area. But it is possible that it's not.
Are social scientists included for consideration for Mosaic, or are they exempt?
Social scientists.
So it depends on the institute. So there are several different participating institutes for Mosaic. So look at the funding opportunity announcement and look at each of the institutes. So if your research, because it may be applied research in like NIA or like technology transfer or something like that, if it falls into one of their areas, it still can apply. But so you have to check to see which institutes are participating, and you should again check the FOA. Yeah, and then talk to your PO, because Oleg will have to say, is this in our mission? So.
And then in the in a 3 Aims application, must there be preliminary data for all of them? How likely are applications with limited preliminary data funded?
Yeah.
Can you repeat the question?
In the 3 Aims applications, do you need to have preliminary data for each of your aims? And then if you have limited preliminary data, does that negatively affect your chances of getting funded?
I can take it. So there are two things I think are important. One is premise, which is kind of the foundation of your research project, the prior knowledge. Does it stand on the solid foundation of the prior knowledge? And this premise will consist of the literature data and your preliminary data. Secondly, it's feasibility, right? How feasible it is that you will be able to do it, and that your methods will work, and that you will achieve your goals, your hypothesis will work. So the criterion is, would the reasonable scientists familiar with your area say that yes, with this preliminary data, it is likely that the project will work, and it is likely that your idea is solid and that your hypothesis is solid. So that would be the kind of the overriding criterion. And that is best to, therefore it's best to not just do it all alone. You talk to your mentor, and you get initial draft of the application well in advance, and show you to a couple of other people in the department or the other postdocs in the laboratory and so on, who will take a look at that.
Yeah, and reviewers more or less have that exact conversation during the discussion of the application. Is the data, like, is there sufficient preliminary data to support the feasibility of the project? You have people inside your field as well as outside of the field, and they'll discuss and talk about it, and they'll say, all right, is it reasonable to expect that? Or like perhaps your training and your prior work can also weigh in on that. So there's lots of ways that kind of bolster the feasibility of your project and the scientific premise. And if you have lots of preliminary data but don't cover how it's connected to the literature, that's also a problem, because you need to kind of, it's a multi-pronged, a multi-legged stool. You have to have a lot of it. You have to, at least it has to sit right. And so the legs may be a little bit different, but they have to sit right.
May I correct something that I said before? I'm sorry, it disrupts the flow, but somebody asked me in the middle whether the 1-year extension for childbirth apply for each child. So I'm looking now at the frequently asked question for the extension of early stage investigator status. And that says that yes, the automatic 12-month extension would be applied to each childbirth. I recall that previously I looked at the FAQs and I saw that it is only one. So I guess my honest answer would be that I'm not sure for the K99s, and we'll need to look at the exact, at the websites and exact NIH policy. Maybe it changed, or maybe I'm confused myself.
I do believe it's each birth, so it's not like if you had like triplets, you don't get 3 years, but but just check like there should be a good FAQ on the new, because the policy is a fairly new one, so you should be able to go. It's actually available to everyone in the community as well.
All right, this is kind of a different question. If you're on an F32 fellowship during the 3rd and 4th years of your postdoc, can you still apply for K99 funding in your 3rd year?
You can. But I think Oleg will tell you how to kind of manage that transition, because I think there's like programmatic transition part, but you can apply.
And just actually, before you answer this, the other question was, can you apply for K99 if you have F32 funding? Would it be possible to switch awards? So if you could just address all of that.
Yes, if the K99 is reviewed successfully and recommended for funding, we will stop the F32 and start the K99.
This is going back to the childbirth extension and COVID. Can they be additive to one another? So if you, that is to say, the expected eligibility was February 2021, automatic COVID extension is up till October 2021. Would a childbirth event extend the deadline to October 2022?
Ooh, I'm gonna have to do the.
I assume the math's correct.
yeah. No, I'm trying to think. I think it applies for the when you start taking leave for that childbirth event. It's 1 year, and it's added to your end of your eligibility. So it's like when your eligibility ends. It's not necessarily the application. Again, it's difference between the application and you as an investigator. So it adds a year to your eligibility statement for birth of a child. But for the COVID-19 extension, it applies to the cycle that you apply to. So those are different eligibility windows. And also, I do believe, I can't remember how it affects your ESI status. And I think that's, I have to look that up. So, and when you ask your SRO any of these questions, we're usually making sure to check with policy and make sure it lines up. So we try to give you a well-researched question. So if I can't answer anything now, please reach out to your SRO or anyone, and we'll make sure to give you a better answer. So.
Yeah, I would say, reach out in this situation. This is kind of rare situation, right? Reach out to your program and SRO. I would think that probably if you already had, let's say, 1 year extension due to childbirth, right? And it was to expire after the June submission date, right? But you were not able to submit in June because the lab was closed due to COVID. I think that you will qualify for this 2-cycle extension of submission. That's, I mean, kind of my logic will say that.
Yeah, I may have answered the inverse of that. Yeah, I couldn't. I think I was answering the inverse of that, where it's you get a COVID extension, then the birth, and I'm like, that one's a different. I have to work that one out. So
yeah, that's one we need to think about. Yeah. Yeah, that's not so obvious.
Can a K99 R00 award be used to transition into a non-tenure track research professor position?
Well, if the institution that you find a position in does not have tenure track or tenure, right? Some do not have tenure system. If it's not a university, if it's a think tank research institution, then it is possible, right? You will discuss it with the program. You will show the offer. Usually we ask questions, and then you convey them to the institution, and they provide us the information on the structure, and we advise you. But it is possible. If you go to a regular university which has tenure track system, but they offer you a non-tenure track position, then likely the answer is no. There was actually such a case when there was a couple, right, and they had to find a position at the same university to move together. It was a family, and they offered tenure track to one and research track to the other. The other had K99, and it did not qualify.
I have a couple questions again about the faculty, applying for faculty positions. Is there any opportunity to justify why you've been applying for faculty positions? And then can you continue on a K99 as faculty?
No, you cannot continue on a K99 as faculty. You have to be in a mentored position during the K99 phase. Faculty should be in the R00 phase. And really, it's, there is no really way to justify why you are applying for a faculty position. I think there has been maybe one exception or two exceptions that I can recall, but it was a long process. It really, so the simple answer would be no. It would be really, really difficult to.
And on a review panel, they're sussing it out pretty well. Like the question becomes, is the review question is further training necessary? And if like one, if you're writing an application, they see that you, like through your publications, your research that you've already developed, that's more reflective of whether you're ready to leave than you applying for your applications, and they'll see that. And if you mention that you've like your professors, your PIs, your mentor may mention that, like, you know, you've given these chalk talks at universities in hopes of finding a position. That's an indicator. They'll read your reference letters. Your reference letters might mention it. It's hard, like if you are doing this, if you're doing it in secret, yeah, and no one knows it, yeah, then it might be able to slide through. But usually it is indicative in the application itself where you're like, oh, okay, this person's actually looking for jobs. And or just because you've shown, don't think of it as a negative, think of it as a positive. You're ready to launch. There are mechanisms for young career faculty that you can apply for. That it just means that K99 R00 is not for you, which is fine. Especially NIGMS's R35 is a great opportunity for the ESI R35. It's a great opportunity for young investigators. So just because you're not eligible for a K99 doesn't mean that, you know, that's a bad thing. It actually might mean it's a good thing. And also DP2, I think that's another opportunity for you. Investigators. So.
And I would add, sometimes applicants add, or their mentor would add, and the faculty position is waiting for the applicant at my department after we will give him assistant professor position after he receives this K99, and think that it is a positive and support, but it is actually negative, right? If there is a commitment to give a faculty position to a person, then there is no need for a K99. He will get faculty position anyway.
Yeah, so and make sure that they don't say it facetiously. They're just like, oh, if they think it's a compliment, just tell them to leave it out of the application. Like that discussions of giving them a faculty position out of the application. Because you should think about the K99 because they're looking at that training portion of it. If it's not there, like it's a non-starter most of the time.
Can you expand a little bit upon how important it is to have publications before your application, and how it works if you have publications that aren't directly related to the research proposal?
Great question. Yeah, so it's a balance between it's looking, if you're looking at the candidate, like they're looking at your productivity, or can you produce scientific work either at the graduate level or the postdoctoral level. It's also kind of working into your feasibility, because those publications may give you some of the preliminary data. So how it's weighted, it really depends on the reviewer, and you'll actually see on any given panel a varying different opinions on what's necessary for you as a scientist and for your application. So.
Yeah, I would add that, yeah, it is a kind of fine walk, right? So on one hand, the reviewers will look, did you have publications, or especially first author publication after you got your PhD, right? During the postdoctoral period. If you have publication directly related to your application, it should be preliminary data publication, not that your AM1 is already done, right? You just published it. Then it's like, you don't need money to perform AM1 because it's already performed, right? So be careful with that.
And especially if it's showing you your training.
I'd like to add, do not delay your application because you are waiting for the paper to be accepted. And it's been, as I will say too, it's been in many, I've heard reviews that, okay, the publication is not there, but we see by the preliminary by the preliminary data and by the letter of recommendation of mentor statement that it is almost there. The data, the preliminary data looks solid. We think it's likely the publication will be accepted in the next couple of months, and that is enough.
And kind of piggybacking right on that is, don't forget post-submission materials. There's a policy about post-submission materials, but so if you're waiting on a publication to submit your application, you can submit your application, and you are given up until 30 days before the review meeting. So that's why it's important to check when your review meeting is. So once you submit an application, it will tell you when your review meeting is, and it's 30 days. Sometimes it may be like the Friday before, the Monday after, depending on the SRO. So contact your SRO about that. But you have 30 days before the meeting to submit post-submission materials, and one of them is accepted publications. So that gives you a lot more leeway, so you don't have to wait 3 months and catch the right funding cycle and stuff like that. You could apply, and then you have 3 months while you're waiting for that publication, because it's one of those unexpected things. So yeah, but I will caution you that people are trying to use bioarchives to submit as a post-submission material, and it's not accepted as a post-submission material because it's post-submission material is to address things that are not are unexpected, and when you post it to bioarchives, you actually have the ability to do that at any time. So you can't use that as a way out. So you can't submit those. So it's very limited. There's like 5 or 6 things that you could submit as post-submission. So look at the guidelines.
Just a few quick questions about mentors. Can you choose one mentor from 2 different universities? Yes?
Yes.
Yes, you can.
What about outside of the US? Sorry, just before you answer.
Oh, outside of the US.
So the parent announcement allows for, I think, and the Mosaic as well, allows for foreign institutions. So it only allows it doesn't allow foreign institutions for you as where you're doing your work. Your mentors can be wherever, but you have to be at a US institution or a foreign arm of a US institution, but you can't be at a foreign research institution.
And then if you have a younger mentor, so you've looked for a co-mentor, does that co-mentor need to be at the same institution?
I want to add to Isaah. So you can be in San Francisco, for example, and your co-mentor is in Utah, let's say. You will have to put in a plan how this will work out, how will you communicate, and if you need to do experiments in Salt Lake City, then what will be the logistics of that, but it's possible. Or the same for collaborator, right, or part of the experiments. Now your question was for the co-mentor. Yes, so the same answer. It is possible to have in different institutions
and then,
in different cities.
If you are applying with your PhD mentor as your mentor for the K99, will that look bad on your application materials?
It really depends. It depends on how you justify. Like again, like just giving a straight up statement. It depends. I've seen people in review handle that very differently, and it's really how you say. Do you justify why you need to stay on with your PhD mentor in terms of new training that you didn't like? If you say you got your PhD training and you didn't get this different element, it's harder to justify, but you can if you could do it effectively. So
just from the experience, I can recall one case where the person finished PhD, went from West Coast to East Coast, worked there for a year. Something did not work out, and he returned back to his old institution, and I think even to his old mentor, but with a new project, right? Of course, it was related, but with a new project. There was a lot of discussion about that. It's not a standard situation, but in that it worked out, at least in one case.
Yeah,
so,
it will definitely generate discussion at a review meeting. So good or bad, it's gonna be brought up.
yeah, you cannot predict how it will come out. Yeah.
Moving a little bit back toward content, can you comment on the scope or the amount of work to propose in a K99? How might that compare to an R01 or an F32 grant?
So scope of work, again, it's a very big question. It all depends. It's all about, can you, if you look realistically at the work you've just proposed, the investigatory track that you're proposing in both, especially with a K, in both the training and career development, will you have enough time to do it? That's the question that they're going to ask about your application. Do you have enough time to, in 2 years, or, and some people will say, in 1 year, I will plan to do all of this. If you can justify, like if your justification is sound, you can propose the moon. Just watch out. So it's hard to say without, like, that's why you should always talk to your PO, because they'll look at your specific games. I won't. They'll look at your specific games and tell you this is too much or this is too little.
And it is kind of a review of your judgment, right? I mean, it is a plan, right? Plans can get modified. It is research into the unknown, right? So we don't know how things will work out. But reviewers will look, can you judge realistically how much time things take, right? So if you put over ambitious application that is impossible to do in 2 years, they will think, well, you do not have a good judgment, a good sense in this.
That reflects on grantsmanship, and they will say overambitious, and as soon as, like, they'll agree or disagree with that, but they'll just say it's overambitious proposal in X, Y, or Z fashion, and so.
Can the second year budget roll into the R phase if an awardee found a tenure track faculty position in the first year of a K99? Seems like maybe they shouldn't have applied to that, huh?
Well, no, if they got 1 year out of it,
Okay,
well,
yeah.
they're able to. So.
Okay.
It depends. Yeah, it will be when the situation arises. Then it will be solved. But the answer is it depends.
Let's see. Most of the previous postdocs my mentor ended up working with are in industry. Is this a negative sign for my mentor's record?
I think as long as they've been, like, their mentorship record is reflective on, are they generating people that will go into scientific careers? If they're producing a lot of people that are going into industry, depends on the position, depends on like how they were mentored into that way. If it was what they wanted to do, that's perfectly fine. If say you do drug discovery and your PI is known to produce high quality researchers and staff scientists for that, that's fine. And reviewers will, since a lot of them will be in your field, they'll be able to better assess, all right, that's good, that's bad.
I would say, so here is the difference between an F32 and the K99, right? So for an F32, it's all an open field, right? You are gaining postdoctoral experience, and then you may go into academia, industry, government, and so your mentors putting out good previous mentees into good positions, it's good. For the K99, you, by writing a K99, by submitting a K99, you specifically declared that you would like to go in academia and lead an independent laboratory, right, as a faculty. So that is kind of a little bit more path determined, right? So reviewers will look more at that outcome.
All right, so in terms of the 75 effort to research, they're curious how that criteria is satisfied. Does it have to be part of the job contract that 75% of the time will be spent on research? And can the requirements be met by working in addition to the planned paid working hours?
Is it about K99 or about R00? So for the K99, I think, so you have to be a full-time postdoctoral fellow.
Yeah.
And how I understand, right, and I see that Mike Sesma is here too, maybe he can correct me if I say something wrong. I understand that you spend 75% on your project, and then 25 you may be doing other things at the university, or if you are an MD, PhD, maybe you have some clinical duties or some other duties that are not directly related to your project. For the R00, it's like you, as a faculty, you will have actually, right, the faculty, there are three pillars, research, education, and service, right? So what this says that you must have no less than 75% of your total professional time allocated to research. So your course load as a teacher and committee participation should not exceed 25% of your time. That's how it is.
Are there any special considerations for people with disabilities as far as the application process and submission timeline goes?
I don't think in terms of like the process, there's not a specific consideration for applicants in terms of like just submitting documentation. We do make extensions for various like health concerns, but I don't think we make any special considerations for people with any kind of disability. Oleg, I keep looking to the left. Oh, Oleg is not to my left.
Yeah, I think that there is, if you maybe you know better about it, Isaah, there is a 2-week period, right, after standard submission due date. There is 2-week period during which you can submit, right, if you had some extraordinary circumstances.
Yeah.
And,
So you can get an extension of 2 weeks if it would have delayed your application by that 2 weeks. So if there are extenuating circumstances, so if someone in your family falls ill, if you injure yourself, if you have any new conditions that occur that would delay your submission for 2 weeks, and it usually is in that proximal region for the grant submission deadline. So if say you like 3 or 4 months before you were sidelined with COVID-19, we use the current one, for a couple of weeks, that consideration will be taken into account, but it will have less impact. Say if you had the same amount of time down for say 3 weeks right before the submission date, because then you'll be then they'll easily give you that extra 2 weeks and say that that is a suitable because we can't grant it in prior to your submission. It is you have to submit your ARF, which is assignment request form, and a cover letter stating why you're asking for that 2 weeks, and then we will decide whether that is a sufficient justification for allowing for that, or else we won't even let it come in to our kind of pile.
I just thought maybe the question relates to if, let's say, the disability did not allow you to work full time for 6 months, right? You could only work part-time during that period. Then, yeah, that
it's usually not applied in that way. No. I was trying to see if some of my colleagues with like combined, I think our grant review office has something like a couple centuries of review experience. I was going to see if anyone else wanted to weigh in, like if they've seen any situations like that. But I don't think, especially if it's a long-term disability, it is not counted towards giving you a 2-week extension.
But eligibility may be extended.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Your eligibility for particular mechanisms may be extended though. So you may not be able to apply for a particular get it 2 weeks on the May submission deadline, but you may actually your eligibility for an ESI or for other mechanisms may be extended. So. Yeah.
For your research statement, how many pages or what proportion should cover the K99 proposed research versus the R00 section?
There is no like I've seen it addressed in lots of different ways, because especially sometimes it's hard to distinguish where you're gonna try to get that separation between your K99 and R00 in terms of like your ideas. So like don't give 1 page of K99 because that might show that might not be appropriate, and probably don't cover, save 1 page at the end for your R00. But that's really, those are extremes, and there's no given balance. Like, it's not 50-50 for everybody.
How many letters of recommendation are usually submitted, and should they all be from mentors, or is it better to have letters from external people?
3 are required, and they have to be someone outside of your mentors. So if you have mentor, co-mentor, they don't count towards your recommendation letters. So you have to have 3 in addition to those people, because the mentors will have their chance to say glowing things about you and what they're planning to do to elevate you in their mentor statement. So 3, and if you don't have that, you're withdrawn. So you have to have at least 3. I don't think there's a hard limit on how many afterwards. I want to say 5 though, but I don't think there's a hard limit on high end.
What is the importance of having received prior fellowship funding?
It's good. It's not to be flippant, but it's all about your build. Like, it's kind of giving it's more further evidence, but it's not required. So if you can demonstrate it in other ways, you don't need to have prior funding. I know there's actually research out there. If you go out there talking about kind of like is it the Michael effect? It's the begetting effect or versus grit, and so there's different schools of thought whether you need it or not.
And also, I heard from the applicants that, for example, good publications are impactful. They weigh more sometimes than the K99, right? So if you are strong, successful, you had a fellowship and you produced strong publications, maybe it's just better to apply and get your assistant professor earlier. But on the other hand, if you want to do this particular thing, you are really excited and you need training in cryo-EM or mass spec or something like that, yeah, then go for a K99 and get that additional training.
I think we just have time for one question. So I just kind of want to go with this last question, but I wanted to remind everyone that if you have further questions, please feel free to reach out to the contacts at NIH that we were talking about, depending on the K99 that you are interested in applying for. So a question related to the review criteria, environment and institution commitment. Does this mean that the institution the candidate is working in as a postdoc shows intention to hire them after the K99 phase? Are there any historical cases of successful candidates available online?
So the institutional commitment to the candidate doesn't need to be something like, we plan on hiring this person as soon as they're done. Institutional commitment is, will they provide the resources and training outlined in the FOA to you? Like, will you be taking, like, is there space? Is there training? Is there lots of different things available to you, and that commitment to you? And do they have resources for you? Is it a rich environment to produce future independent investigators?
If they have a letter that we will have a position for you after you are done, that may weaken your application instead of make it stronger, actually. Right, Isaah? Because reviewers will say, well, the person has a faculty position waiting for him. There is no need for a K99 then.
And reviewers, again, will kind of suss out, are you ready? So sometimes they will also, like, I said to warn your PIs not to put kind of like this flippant, I will hire him in a second kind of comments. But reviewers are at least, they're your colleagues. They're people, we have K99, R00 members of our panels. They're there and they'll say, okay, this is just a flippant remark. And then they're usually fine. But if it's not clear, that it may count against you. So be cautious.
Well, I think that hits our time limit. We're at 2 p.m. now. So I want to thank both of our speakers for being here. It's been excellent to hear what you have to say and to have you answered so many questions. I think we've answered 55, maybe a little bit fewer because I've tried to get a couple in between. So thank you so much. And this concludes this session. So thank you all for being here.